What's up guys, the Strong Boys 19 here. This is going to be another episode for the album review segment of requested albums, and I also would like to apologise that I've not been very consistent into this segment, but I decided to come back since that I got a request from one of the comments from Ryan Roopari, and he requested me an album to review from one of the world's most beloved and critically acclaimed bands of Faith No More, with their very popular album entitled The Real Thing. The Real Thing is Faith No More's third studio album. It was released on the 20th of June 1989 through Slash Records and Reprise Records. This is the follow-up to the band's previous record of Introduce Yourself, and the last to feature Chuck Mosley, and he was replaced by the infamous Mike Patton from the experimental Mr. Bungle. He was also too many as the man of 1,000 voices, and on this album the songwriting became a bigger dominating sound, and this lineup of Faith No More remains until the band's breakup in the late 90s. The sound to this album incorporates a different stylistic approach of the sound and songwriting, involving genres of alternative metal, rap metal, funk metal, also incorporating hard rock and progressive rock. This was produced by Matt Wallace, recorded through December 88 to January 89. Upon its release, the album did receive a lot of positive reviews, releasing 5 singles from Out of Nowhere on August 30th, Epic, the band's most popular track, on January 30th, 1990, Falling to Pieces on July 2nd, Surprise You're Dead released the same year, and Edge of the World released the next year of 91. The Real Thing, in my opinion, is always one of my favourite albums in the band's discography, because even though that I massively enjoyed the first 2 albums of We Care A Lot and Introduce Yourself, they were not one of those perfect, standout, awesome albums, but I did like them, and especially with Chuck Mosley, whom I consider to be a very underrated vocalist. I think The Real Thing is where the beginnings of Faith No More's acclaim really takes things up, because Mike Patton replacing Mosley is a very massive improvement, and he's always another one of my favourite vocalists of all time, always one of my top 5 actually, because I absolutely love how diverse, experimental and different he sounded. Even though that this album was not the first to hear him go in various varieties of ranges and sounds as a vocalist, because with this album he goes into a higher range, nasally kind of vocal range. I think it definitely adds in so much more character and the amount of ability with the sound and the tonality onto the album. The songs to the album sound absolutely fantastic, and I think the best part of the album is the sound of the musicianship. Every member from the band sounded very precise and very tight at the same time, and a lot of the material sounded really strong onto the album. Even though that this is not my favourite album in the Faith No More discography, because my favourite is Angel Dust, which is an album that I would love to review for an album review very soon, whenever I want to do it. But I think that The Real Thing is just another one of those fantastic albums that never really goes out stylistically. And if you want to get into something very approachable, into a really great, strong, consistent, and a characteristic sound of an album, then I will recommend The Real Thing. I think the production from Matt Wallace is really good, although I think that the distorted guitar tone doesn't really define itself, and not really one of the best guitar tones, but it does not take away the amount of songwriting and the sound of the band here. And also, I think that the drums sound really, really good. It's just full of this massive amount of kick and punch, and the attack that was all over, and the bass guitar tone is absolutely phenomenal on the album. I love how prominent it sounds, just a huge, very big sound, and the keyboards that really grows the sound of Faith No More as consistently a really good, soft and smooth sound of the keyboards. The first track of the album, From Out of Nowhere, is a massive classic. This is another one of my favorite Faith No More tracks of all time. From the very beginning, it explodes into so much action. It's just so much more catchiness that continues to grow. And hearing Mike Patton going into a very direct and an instant sound, this track is just so precise, always one of my favorites, and this maybe would be one of my top 3 favorite opening tracks from Faith No More's albums. The main popular track of the album, Epic, definitely needs no introduction. This was the song that really got me introduced to Faith No More. And also, I really do love how characteristic Mike Patton sounds in the verse sections into this very staccato rap vocal style. And the music video was my introduction to the band, and it did get a lot of controversy for Patton because he was mimicking Anthony, and to grow a feud very popular of the band versus the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Mr. Bungle versus that band, but that's for another topic. Epic is just a song that remains as a very consistent and energetic number. I love the verse sections with the smacking drums and the bass guitar tones. The guitar harmonies from Jim Martin's solos are absolutely wonderful on the record. It's just a song that adds so much punch and bite at the same time. Falling to Pieces, this is another standout track for me, and possibly my main favourite number on the album because it's extremely fun all the way through. The introduction, hearing the bass tone and the assaulting drums to punish things further, but this chorus just never ever gets old. It's extremely awesome. I love how very charismatic and dominating this track sounds. And in terms of the sound of the band with the rest of the tracks, like onto the track of The Real Thing, the longest track on the album, I love how very diverse and progressive it sounds, and to hear something very moody, and it can be a little bit experimental at the same time, but it's just the exploding and the massive sound of Patton as a vocalist. He just adds a lot of diversity onto the track. The Real Thing is an amazing track, as well as some of the later tracks of Underwater Love that I think is very underrated, and I find that a lot of the ability to hear the sound of the band being great into something improving, and a lot of edge that was put onto this. I think that the previous 2 albums, they were finding their craft, but The Real Thing marks Faith No More as a band into something very special. And in terms of some of the later tracks, I don't find that they were defining as much as the first half, but you cannot deny that there is still an amazing set of guitar riffs, a lot of vocal talent, and the drums. I could really go on about this album, but I find Angel Dust to be the band's main magnum opus. It was just a massive album. The vocal talents from Patton on the album, he sounded great on the album. I love his actions, his character, and the charm. Jim's guitar solos and riffs, amazing on the record. You cannot forget this album without talking about their cover of War Pigs, originally by Black Sabbath fame, obviously. I wish that this cover was included on the original version of the album, because this is another one of my main favourite cover songs from any band, period, because it adds Faith No More's sound into their dedication and homage to Black Sabbath, and their cover of War Pigs just as immense, awesome, one of those classic golden sounds from a band like Faith No More that they can really pull things off with just a phenomenal cover. And I think that the rest of the album, from the songwriting, sounded really, really good. To me, it's just not one of those standout classic albums, but this album, for its significance and impact, I can definitely say that this album is always one of my favorites. in the band's discography. That's all I would like to say on Faith No More's album The Real Thing, and let me know what you think of this album in the comments down below. I'm going to give this album a 9 out of 10, and thank you very much to Ryan for suggesting this album to me to review, and as always, I will keep you guys posted for more videos in the near future.